Good afternoon, and thank you for coming today. We have had an incredible turnout, and I appreciate everyone signing up for our webinar. I want to give MJ Grant a huge thank you for providing interpreting services today. The event is being recorded for viewing at a later date. Hello, my name is Timothy Applegate. I am the director of the finance division for the Maine Paid Family and Medical Leave Program, or PFML for short. The division I oversee is employer facing, and my team will be available to assist with navigating Maine's new PFML program. I'm guessing that members of the audience have varying levels of familiarity with the Maine PFML program. Some of you may be wondering if you have to do something come January, or others might think they have to do something but aren't sure what. Today, I will define what employers are required to do, demonstrate the new Maine paid leave portal, and if time allows, answer some of your questions. Please keep your questions to employer-related subjects. I will not be answering benefits or substitution plan questions at this time. In October of 2023, Maine became the 13th state to enact a paid family and medical leave program. Since then, a small team have been working diligently on rulemaking, managing contracts, hiring staff, and building a program from the ground up. Beginning January 1st, 2025, employers with employees earning wages in Maine, or what are called covered employees, will begin collecting PFML premiums. The premiums for employers with 15 or more covered employees is 1% of wages, half of which, or half a percent, may be deducted from employee wages. Employers with fewer than 15 employees will be responsible for reporting and remitting half a percent of wages. The total amount may be deducted from employee wages. The determination on whether an employer deducts from employees rests with the employer. When making the decision, please keep in mind that all employees must be treated equally. In addition to collecting premiums, employers will be required to remit and report wages on a quarterly basis. If you're wondering if you have employees who are exempt from premiums, please see the proposed PFML rule section 2B. Starting in January, all employers with Maine or covered employees will be required to register on the Maine Paid Leave portal. And here, we are currently looking at the Maine Paid Leave portal homepage. Please note that the date we have our test system set to is April 1st, 2025, since that is when the first quarter filing will open. The portal will be available for registration in January. To register, employers will click one of two links to register. For our example, Tim's Sugar Shack is registering. And for registration, you will need the legal name of your business, your federal EIN, the date you began paying wages in Maine, the physical and billing address, and information about the number of employees you have had. And on this page, you're being asked to tell us about your business. Tim's Sugar Shack is neither self-employed nor is it a tribal government. So we'll select no for both questions. The next question asks, when did you first start paying wages in Maine? If you represent a business that is headquartered outside of Maine, we only need to know when you started paying wages in Maine. For this example, we'll be using January 1st, 2001. The next question is important. It is asking if you had 15 or more employees on your payroll for 20 or more work weeks in the last year, beginning on October 1st, 2023. Because Tim's Sugar Shack has less than 15 employees, we'll select no. On this screen, you'll enter legal name. In this case, it's Tim's Sugar Shack, a DBA if one is used, and your FEIN. The next screen asks for your physical address. You'll have a chance to enter a mailing address later. You will note the blue hyperlink at the bottom to verify the address. This ensures that the address entered matches the United States Postal Service's database. If your mailing address differs from your physical address, enter it here. If you do enter a mailing address, it will also need to be verified like your physical address. But in our case, they're the same, so we'll select no. A bank account can be added at registration, but we've decided to do it later and are selecting no. On this screen, we will do three things: create a username, set up password recovery, and also communication preferences. First, enter your name, then email. Please note that this email will also be your username when you log into the Maine paid leave portal. This step requires verification. A code will be sent to your email and can be entered here. And for purposes of our demo, we'll just fill in the passcode. Once you've entered the code, we'll move on to a password. Passwords must be at least 8 characters in length, have upper and lowercase letters, have both letters and numbers, as well as a special character. Once that is complete, we'll set up password recovery. Select a question from the drop-down menu, and for the demo, we'll be using "What was the name of your first pet?" And then you'll type an answer. If you forget your password, you'll be asked this question. The next step is to set up communication preferences. Please note that you can have communications sent to the registered email, or you can have it sent elsewhere. If, for example, you have a shared email address, you can have emails sent there instead of only to you. If you choose to enter another email address, it will have to be verified as well. If you use a payroll processor, do not have communications sent to their email. We will demonstrate how to give access to your payroll processor later. Next, we'll add a phone number where we can reach you at. And the last thing is to opt into SMS messaging. This will send you an SMS if you have any unread letters on the Maine paid leave portal. We will choose to opt in. And here, please review all entries, and if correct, hit submit. If something does need correcting, hit the previous button down below or click on the desired blue section above. This is your confirmation, and you should keep the confirmation number. To print, click Printable View and Print. Once you have your confirmation number, hit OK. This is the entire registration processes that employers are required to complete. We anticipate that it will only take a few minutes, but staff will also be available for assistance. I do want to take a second and point out that when the portal goes live, it will have an employer resources page. You can see those same resources now at maine.gov/paid leave. And now we're going to log in to Tim Sugar Shack's Maine paid leave account. So here we'll enter the username, which is the email address you signed up with, and then the password. On this step, we will set up two-factor authentication using one of three options: an authentication app, text message, or email. When you log into your Maine paid leave account, you'll be required to enter a code sent to the option you select on the screen. This option can be updated later if need be. For our demo, we'll be using an authentication app. If you have an authentication app, you will take a picture of the QR code and follow the steps on your phone and should receive a security code. The code will be entered here. For our demo, we'll just fill it in. You may also click Trust this device to skip the two-factor authentication in the future. We are now looking at the summary page of Tim's Sugar Shack. This is what you will see when you log in. This screen shows your business name, your business address, and towards the center of the screen in green, you'll see a zero balance and the Maine paid leave account number. If you use a payroll processor, please provide them with that number. You'll also notice below in blue the premium rate through December 31st, 2025. We are now going to demonstrate how to set up secondary logons. To get there, we'll click on the blue Manage My Profile hyperlink. This will bring us to where employers can manage their profile and security settings such as password and security questions. We'll click on the More tab and find the My Users panel. The reason why we are demonstrating this to you is because as the employer, you should register your business with Maine paid leave. Once you do that, you can assign a secondary logon, such as your HR manager. This way, if your HR manager ever leaves your business, you will still have access to your account. It also allows you to add new employees and remove employees no longer with your business. So to add a secondary logon, we will click Manage Secondary Logons. And we will also click the Add hyperlink. Here, you will create their username. You'll enter their name, their email address, and there are also two levels of access types. Administrators are able to create additional secondary logons and edit the access levels of secondary logons. For instance, if your HR manager has employees who also need access, this level allows them to set up logins for their employees. Account managers are able to perform actions such as filing or paying, but cannot add additional logons or edit the access of other logons. Perhaps you have one person in your business who will file wage reports and remit PFML contributions. They could be set up as an account manager because they do not need to create additional logons. Once that is complete, we'll hit the next button. The important thing on this screen is to leave the default employer group and the account access PFML contribution boxes checked, and then we'll hit submit. Staying under Manage My Profile, we will now add a bank account. We can do this by clicking on Manage Payment Methods. Next, we will click on the Set Up New Payment Method and choose a bank account type. Here, enter the routing and account number to be used. You'll select the bank account type, either checking or savings. And you can edit the name field, which could be helpful if you'll be using, say, multiple bank accounts. And then we'll save it. Now we're going to file a quarterly wage report and need to get back to the home screen. A shortcut is to click on the green heart with the pine tree in it, and you'll be brought right back to the home page. So now we're going to file a wage report for Tim's Sugar Shack. On the right side of the screen, we will click View and File Wage Reports. From there, we will click on the File Now hyperlink. For our demo, we will be filing the first quarter of 2025. To file a wage report, you will need each employee's Social Security number, first and last name, and the wages earned during the first quarter. This business status screen is used to determine if the business is filing its final report. In this case, Tim's Sugar Shack is still in business, so we will select no. Now, there are two options for filing a wage report. The first is manually inputting wages, and the second is uploading an Excel spreadsheet. And we'll demonstrate both for you. To input a wage report, click the Add a Record hyperlink. A really great function of our system is that once employees are added to a record, they remain listed as an employee in subsequent quarters. Once employees are added, you will only have to edit their wages. If an employee no longer works for you, they can easily be removed. Now, let's upload an Excel spreadsheet wage report. To do so, click the Download Template hyperlink. And you will notice, just like the manual input option, that there are 4 columns: Social Security number, last name, first name, and quarterly wages. The next sheet has instructions such as Social Security number should be entered with no hyphens, and that the first sheet should always be named Employee Wages. The name of the file can be whatever you want it to be, though. The third sheet is an example wage report. And please note that wages are to be reported to the nearest cent. For purposes of our demonstration, we will upload a pre-filled spreadsheet. Once the wage information is entered, double check the report for accuracy and make edits as needed. The next screen asks if we want to enter a refund bank account. Tim's Sugar Shack is not expecting a refund, so we will select no. This is the review screen. Please ensure that the number of employees and wages are correct. This here is the payment screen. Because Tim's Sugar Shack does not want to be late with payment, we will select yes to make a payment. The payment screen will display the amount due with this wage report. The amount needs to be confirmed, and we will keep the payment as April 1st. Now, remember earlier that we added a bank account. That bank account can be selected here, or you can add another one. We're going to use the bank account that we previously set up. To confirm your submission, you will enter your password here. And this is your confirmation page. And again, like earlier, you'll want to keep your confirmation number. And once you have it, hit OK. If you want a summary of wage reports, click on the period on the left. This will display the quarter, the contributions, and credits or payments. Now we're going to look at web messaging. If you have a question about paid family medical leave, you can send us a message through the portal. Under the More tab, click Send a Message. There are two options, one for general questions and one for PFML account specific question. In this case, Tim Sugar Shack has a question about the premiums rate. So this will be the second hyperlink. This question does not concern a specific period, so the first option is the correct option. The question does relate to Tim's Sugar Shack PFML account, so we will select account. And here we will select rating. And this allows you to enter a subject and write a message. So Tim Sugar Shack is wondering what their premium rate is for 2025. And once they're done with the question, they'll hit send, and Tim Sugar Shack will be alerted when a Maine paid leave staff member responds to the message. And with that, we'll head back to the home page. And some of you may have noticed that there's an alert under the Action Center. You've been given a notice that Pine Tree Payroll has requested access to your account. And Steve from Pine Tree Payroll has requested access to your account. By granting access, you allow paid family medical leave staff to discuss your account with Pine Tree Payroll. And we'll select yes. Next, check the box to grant account access. There are 4 levels of access. In this case, Tim's Sugar Shack has a full service payroll service and will grant access to file and make wage payments. Now, Tim's Sugar Shack's third party or payroll processor will then take it from there. Your third party can file and pay on your behalf. But please remember that you, as the employer, are ultimately responsible for ensuring wage reports are filed and premiums are remitted. And with that, our demonstration is complete, and we will now answer some of your questions.
Okay, so at this time, we have a number of questions, understandably, but I'm gonna start with kind of some of the easier ones. So basically, this goes to the portal being open. So when will the portal be officially open?
Yeah, so the portal should be launching very early January 2025. And to hit on, I think, a couple of the questions I saw, every employer in the state of Maine or every employer with at least one Maine-based employee will need to register for an account through the Maine Paid Leave portal. But again, it'll be releasing early in January 2025. We will be sending out more information as we approach the launch date. So if you are not already signed up for our Get Notified list, please do so at our website, maine.gov/paidleave.
Awesome. And then we definitely got a couple of questions about bank accounts. So one of the questions was, can we set up, multiple bank accounts?
Yes.
Do we need to add a bank account if our TPA company will be doing the filings?
No. You may want to verify that that your third party will be remitting payment.
If we have a payroll service doing our PFML deductions, I'm assuming we say no when adding a bank account, so I think it goes to the
Yeah.
previous question.
Yeah.
And then, this other person asks, why do we need to add a bank account? In general,
If you do not use a third-party payroll processor, then you'll be required to make payment, and adding a bank account is the means to do that.
and can, Maine PFML be paid via bank transfer?
No.
The next one, we got a couple of them and it revolves around, I think,
Let me go back to that.
Oh, sure.
There will be three options for payment: ACH credit, ACH debit, available on the portal, and also we will accept credit card payments.
kind of switching up the topic in terms of registering, per FEIN. So each FEIN needs to register separately, correct?
Yes.
And if we are a school that is part of a municipality, will our city do the registration? So it's kind of going to the,
It's a question if they share one FEIN, so employers have to register and wage report under their FEIN, so whatever that unit of organization is.
and it's just, so what about a municipality? Would we use our date of incorporation?
So it's the date you first start paying wages in Maine, and I saw a couple of questions, you know, if you're a company that's 150 years old, you know, I would just give your best approximation. It's most important for the recency of business, to establish premium liability. So if it's before, you know, 1980, we don't necessarily need it to be exact. So if you're a company that's 150 years old and you don't know the exact year that you started paying wages in Maine, best guess is fine for that piece.
And this kind of going back, sorry, back to FEINs, but we have two FEINs. Does that mean we need to have two separate accounts?
If they're two separate employers, yes, they would need two separate accounts.
Okay. This one's moving towards kind of like the location. So what about multiple locations? Does each location have to be added? If you're, I guess you're a business that have,
If each location has its own EIN.
PO box, could we use that instead of a physical address?
Don't think so.
Yeah, and I saw a question about that related question about if you have an address that's not registered by the USPS, there is an override function in the systems, correct? So you can override if it's not an established USPS verified address. You can still override it if you're living in a place that doesn't have a recognized USPS address.
Does the physical address need to be in the state of Maine?
No, because your employees could be Maine-based, but the company might be. I saw that question come through as well. You could be a California-based company, and your physical address is in California, but you might have Maine-based employees that you're wage reporting on.
So now kind of switching to wages. So, Tim said that wages should be reported to the nearest cent, but what about dollars only uploaded?
Yeah, I think that was just an example.
Yeah, it was just.
Oh, it's an example, okay. And then can you explain the wages that will be required?
So it's similar to the state unemployment insurance definition of wages, but it's applied to a broader set of employment, because the Maine PFML law does not have the exemptions of employment that state unemployment tax has. But in terms of how the wages are calculated, what's subject wages or not, we did mirror the state unemployment insurance definition, which is a bit complex. So I would refer that one to FAQ language and proposed rule language for specifics. But in general, it's calculated the same as state unemployment wages are.
Okay. And these are just more scattered general questions. So, what if pay periods don't align with the quarters?
So it's based on, you know, the pay periods that have occurred in that quarter, correct, Tim?
Yes, it's a snapshot, because our quarter will end Q1 March 30th, so it's a snapshot from January 1st to March 30th.
And the pay date's within that time frame. Yep. Correct.
Who in the organization should be setting up the portal? Kind of gets to it though. Is there-
So if it's a large organization, if it's small business, the ownership. If it's a larger, somebody who's responsible will be there, has an interest in the company.
Can you explain the difference between an admin versus users?
That was in the, hold on a minute.
Administrators and account managers,
Was that what it was?
probably.
Was that when we were setting up the second?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, hang on a second. Second. Oh, administrators and account managers. So an administrator can create additional secondary logins. So back to the who should register. The business owner should register. And then they can set up secondary logons. We don't want to run into a situation where an employee sets up the account and then 6 months from now, a business owner calls up and is trying to get in and doesn't have access to their account. So the owner should set up the account, and then they can grant secondary logons or create secondary logons. And there are two levels. An administrator can create additional secondary logons for, say, their employees, or an account manager can file and pay, but can't create or alter other secondary logons.
I see some raised hands, popping up, due to the time that we have. It would be best to put your question in the Q&A and then we can try to get to it, as quick as possible. But back to general questions. Will there be a new tax ID? This is sounding like similar to unemployment.
There
Or
will
different.
be an account number. But not a new, we're using your federal EIN.
And did you talk to if the account number is needed for bulk reporting?
It's not needed for bulk filing, but it could be helpful for the payroll processors to have both the EIN and the associated account number.
And kind of related to that, I saw a couple of questions come through about, if an employer is hooked up to the Maine tax portal or reemploy me, do they also need to sign up for this account? And the answer is yes, they do also. This is a third system that employers need to sign up for. And unfortunately, that's not something we can control. The reemploy me system is a tri-state contract that, does not allow for Maine specific functionality for the program we need. And the Maine tax portal has similar limitations. So this is a third system that every employer in the state of Maine needs to register for.
This is kind of going back to how should you count your employees? So will it just be Maine employers or the overall amount of employers? Like this might be an employer who's out of state. Do you need to count your Maine employees?
Maine
Or do you?
employees.
Okay. And then, can we have more than one primary login? Are payments required to be ACH or can a check be submitted?
No checks, please. We are pushing everybody. We want everybody to send in electronic payments. We can entertain a waiver. That would have to be requested and we can consider it, but ideally, everybody's gonna be filing and paying electronically.
Will the system accept 2 reports? So one from a town and then one from the school? Can both the admin and the account managers file and make payments for the business?
Say that one more time.
Oh, yeah. Can the admin and the account managers file and make payments for the business? Okay. And this kind of going to TPAs, but if someone has a TPA, why should the employer be registered?
The reason they want to register is because it's up to them to ensure their payroll processor is doing what they need to. The way to ensure is to log into the portal to verify that your quarterly wage report is filed, that it matches the wages that you're paying, and that the payment has been remitted.
And that kind of goes to a question we get a lot in other webinars, is that the employer is ultimately responsible for the wage filing and any penalties associated with non-wage filing. So it's important that the employer knows what's going on and designates a correct TPA, because the ultimate liability for non-payment is on the employer, not on the TPA.
This is a good question. So is there a deadline to register as an employer?
I mean, in theory, registration will open up in January, and in theory, all registrations really should happen before wage reporting starts, which is April 1st. We recognize that, you know, there might be some people that can't get to it in time, and we're still gonna receive bulk file uploads from TPAs, even if all their clients have not registered. But in theory, every employer with at least one main-based employee should register for an account by the time wage reports start, which is April 1st. Really by the time that they're due, which is April 30th of next year.
So kind of going back to TPAs, what information do we need to give our TPA to file for us?
So we do have bulk file wage specifications up on our website, maine.gov/paid leave under employer resources. And also I would encourage your TPA to attend the demonstration next week. We have another one of these webinars for TPA specifically. So that's December 10th between 12 and 1. Registration is open on our website. So if your TPA is interested, I would point them to attend that webinar. We'll also post both recordings for this webinar and that webinar on our website once completed. So even if they can't make it live, they can see the information after the fact.
Okay. Will we be able to remit payment after each payroll, or do we do it quarterly?
It's statute said it's quarterly remittances. We may look at prepayment in the future, but to start, we're following the statute. It's quarterly remittances.
Okay. And this one is kind of going to maybe a policy, but should the employer contribution be set up as a pre-tax or a post-tax?
And that's where I would point to the FAQ. That's a question of taxability of premiums, which is, I mean, up to the IRS to provide guidance on.
Right. Another policy question, are H-2A employers exempt?
So H-2A, so visa status? I think.
Yeah, kind of goes
Yeah,
to-
so there is no exemption in the law for an employee who is under a special visa status. So any employee in the state of Maine or any employee who's earning wages in the state is subject, no matter how little, no matter if they're a temporary worker and no matter if they're a visa holder. If they're earning wages as an employee, they're subject to this law.
Okay. So what are the penalties if we set up for the employee deductions to be post-tax instead of a pre-tax? So there's an incorrect.
Tim, you might know that better.
I don't think there is a penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really up to federal guidance about how they would reconcile federal taxes. And same thing for MRS.
Do we need a vendor for these payments, or will that be the treasurer of the state of Maine? So who's gonna be, where the money is going into, I guess, what bank account?
It will go to the right bank account if you log into the portal and make a payment. We don't need to set up a vendor or have a W-9.
And this is more of a general question. I think it kind of goes to, whether this webinar is, certifiable for, CPEs or for CPAs. I guess is more of like
I think you gotta get like, you have to have like, this is not, as I understand it, set up for a CPA. This is just an informational webinar we're offering to the
Okay.
general public.
Okay. And we're gathering more questions now, so, and we still have just under 20 minutes, so if you definitely wanna get those questions in, that'll be great.
I just wanted to answer one I saw come through, but I know we get it a lot, is there's a question out there is, who do you include in your employee count of counting the 15? Is it just Maine-based employees? Yes, it's only Maine-based employees. And then there's also a question I've seen about, do you include somebody in your employer size count if you don't believe that they're gonna make the wage threshold for eligibility? And the answer is yes, you include anybody, even if they're making $100, let's say, for summer work. They should be included if they're on the payroll when you're looking in your 52-week look back period. There may only be certain weeks in which they're working, but you don't need to worry about the wage threshold in terms of whether or not you report wages and whether or not you count somebody as a covered employee towards your employer side count. The wage threshold for eligibility is determined by the state when somebody applies for benefits, because an employer may not know if their employee is working multiple jobs, or their employee might change jobs and meet the wage threshold at a new job. So it's important that we capture all covered employees with the premiums so that they can work towards that wage threshold for eligibility. But in terms of including your employer count and premium deductions, it's any employee in the earning wages in the state of Maine, no matter how little.
Is this premium based off of gross wages?
So gross wages implies like every single thing. So again, the definition of wages is tied to the state unemployment tax definition of wages. And even then, there's certain things that are not included as subject wages. And I would point to IRS publication 15C.
Circular E.
Circular E, thank you. With special attention paid to the federal unemployment tax column in that guidance, because there are certain types of wages that are exempt from federal unemployment tax and state unemployment tax when you're calculating subject wages. So it is close to gross wages, but it is not the same as gross wages because there are certain types of wages that are not subject wages. So it's something I would definitely point people to the language and proposed rule in FAQ.
Kind of going back to a portal related question, how does one set themselves up as a TPA?
Oh, we're gonna have a webinar about that on December 10th. Please sign up for it.
So just more kind of broader questions. So are the premium rates locked in for a certain period of time?
For at least the first 3 years, until 2028, I believe is the first year that the premium amount will vary. But for 2025, 26, and 27, it will be 1%.
Are employers required to notify employees of the new deductions?
Yes, they should as soon as possible, in preference to at least 30 days before, so now.
Okay. Another wage question, is this total employees or Maine-based employees for the count?
Maine-based employees.
Okay. And, how should we update the number of employees that we have?
Oh, that's a good question, Ward. When do they update the count?
Every year at when you file your third quarter report, the system will ask the same question: how many employees, or did you have the 20 hold on, more than 15 employees in 20 work weeks during the past year?
15 or more, but you're there, yeah. But yeah,
So
you update that question every third quarter annually after registration.
And if you have a third party or payroll processor, they'll do that for you.
Can we register before January?
No, the portal will be launching, like I said, early January, and as soon as it's open, people can start registering.
So I guess maybe we can just read it there. So do self-employed individuals have to pay? We have 3 owners who
And
are all
for the
self-employed.
interpreter, Reggie, can you move your hands down?
Oh, I'm
having a
sorry,
hard time
yes.
catching
Yeah,
you. Thank
yeah.
you.
No, thank you. That's a good catch. Yeah, so do self-employed people have to pay? And we have 3 owners who are all self-employed. Do we all have to pay?
So this kind of comes down to the corporate structuring question. So if you are a self-employed individual and you earn wages from your company, and the clearest example in my mind is an S corp. So if you have a wage that you draw from your company, those wages that you earn as an employee are subject to PFML premium. So those wages you earn as an employee are subject wages. Those have to be reported even if you're a self-employed individual. If you want to also register as a self-employed individual on your other wages, your profit minus loss, you can do so. Or if you're a self-employed individual who does not, earn traditional wages, quote unquote, this portal does allow you to elect coverage. And we'll have more information about that coming in the future of how you can elect coverage in the portal as a self-elected person. And that can begin as soon as the portal is released as well. People can start opting into coverage as a self-elected person if they want, or excuse me, self-employed person if they want to.
Next question that we see here, are there any limits to the number of admins or account managers that a company can set up in the portal?
And it looks like no.
If applicable, will refunds be issued automatically, or is it the employer's responsibility to monitor and then request a refund?
We will monitor for refunds and they will be issued as needed.
More kind of a technical question about the portal. Do we need to remove all special characters in the employee name, or just like unemployment for the electronic upload?
I mean, if it's a hyphenated name, does it accept a hyphenated name?
I believe we accept hyphens and apostrophes right now.
Okay.
But like the tildes and stuff like that, those will cause issues. That should be on an updated version of the Excel spreadsheet for the wage report upload that will be going up in the portal.
Is there integration ability with our payroll company? So the ones that are like ADP or Paychex or?
Yes, we've had a lot of communication with, national payroll, consortiums, and individual payroll processors, software companies. And I believe at this point, every payroll processor should be aware of the program and have been given the specifications for bulk filing, and we've been in constant communication.
And if they haven't, the bulk specifications are on our website now, maine.gov/paid leave under employee resources.
We just have about 10 minutes left. So once I register the business out of state for an employee residing in Maine, will I have the ability to file a private plan exemption form through the portal? If so, what are the deadlines to submit the exemption or the substitution?
Yeah, so the private plan substitution process will begin April 1st forward. That will be through the portal. Any premiums owed before the substitution approved are owed, so that means that everyone is paying their first quarter. And the private plan substitution process will begin April 1st forward, and you would apply eventually for a substitution through the portal. We will have a lot more information about private plans going on our website, including narrated webinars going online soon, within a month or so.
Is there an employee wage base or a cap, assuming when you report?
So we need all wages reported, and then the system, when it's calculating premiums, will do so up until the Social Security wage limit set annually. So we do need employers to report all wages, but the system, when it's calculating your premium amounts to 1%, it does that based on the Social Security cap limit set annually. And I believe for next year, it's roughly 170,000. Yeah.
So for a company with less than 15 employees, just double checking, is the premium rate just 0.5%?
Yes.
Okay. So
Quickly on that one, our single employee organizations required to file, yes.
Yep, and kind of going back to, does an employer with less than 15 employees have to pay a premium? Yes. So the next question is, we need before January, so the employee are starting to receive deductions from their payroll.
Yeah, so the deductions really are on the employer or the payroll company to start the deductions. The wage reporting to us happens quarterly, so it doesn't actually begin to April 1st. So in terms of when you file your first report with the Maine Paid Leave portal, it's beginning April 1st is when you would have your first quarterly wage report due, or starting to be due up until April 30th. But employers should be setting up their payroll deductions now, even before they register for a Maine Paid Leave portal, because the Maine Paid Leave portal is only the mechanism through which employers will be filing their quarterly reports and doing their quarterly remittances. But really, they're going to be creating their own, or they're going to be conducting their own employer-side counts and reporting that to us when they register. So they should be setting up their deductions now, not waiting for registration on the Maine Paid Leave portal, because that is only needed before wage reporting starts on April 1st.
Yeah. So as an employer, do we set up an account and then give our account number to our payroll company so they can gain access to both file and make a payment?
Yes, it is helpful if they can file on your behalf with only the EIN. And they should be able to pay on your behalf as well. Can you go back to that? There was something down there. So they don't need access, they don't necessarily need access to your account to file or pay on your behalf. But giving third-party access can be helpful for payroll processors. So it's kind of a different thing. They can file and pay on your behalf without third-party access to your account.
And so just to clarify, can we do two filings if someone is inadvertently left out, or does a second one replace the first one in terms of filing? I'm
Amended
assuming.
filing.
Yeah, you can amend, absolutely.
So does the employer, so the employer doesn't assign the TPA, or can we give? the
Wait,
TPA?
let's go back to that. When they file, when an amended return is filed, they still have to report all wages, correct? Okay, so you wouldn't report the one person who you left out. You would want to report everybody plus that one person.
So the next question is, so the employer doesn't assign the TPA? We give the TPA account number and then they register?
You register, the third party can request access to your account. You can either accept or deny it.
But the third party could even, in theory, file on your behalf, even if you haven't given them permission to do so. Yeah, and that's why the only thing they actually need is the FEIN. The account number will be helpful for them, but they only actually need the FEIN in order to do a bulk wage upload.
So the next question is kind of going to collective bargaining agreement. So when reporting our number of employees, do we include the employees that are covered under a collective bargaining agreement and not just those required to pay until it expires?
That's a great question. So if you had a collective bargaining agreement in effect on 10/25/23 that has not expired yet, those individuals are technically not covered employees, quote unquote, under rules. So you would not include them in your employer count, and you would not include them on your wage reports for premium withholdings and payments. Once that collective bargaining agreement expires for the first time, or the end date on the collective bargaining agreement, so let's say it's July 1st, 2025, on that date that the collective bargaining agreement expires for the first time, they are a covered employee as of that date. So they're included in your count of the 15 from that date forward. They're included in payroll deductions and remittance payments from that day forward. But before they receive that expiration date, if the collective bargaining agreement was in effect, a public collective bargaining agreement, and that's important. This does not apply to private collective bargaining agreements. It's public sector collective bargaining agreements only that were in effect on 10/25/23. They are not covered employees until it expires.
And we have about 4 minutes left. So if I pay a 1099, am I responsible for registering this person and withholding this premium?
If you have a 1099 employee, you might want to check if they're really, a self-employed individual or not. But if they are a self-employed person, they can elect coverage. But yeah, there's always confusion about 1099 employees, which isn't a thing. Either they're your employee or they're self-employed.
Just to kind of clarify about the count again, the employee count. What is the look back period to determine the count threshold? Is it October 1st, 2023 through?
So it's actually, the first look back period it's the year preceding 10/1/2024. So it's actually, 10/1/2023 through 9/30/2024 is the first look back period that you self-report when you register for the account for your premium liability.
Will we be sent an account number, or will it be given to us when we register?
It'll be right on the portal. When you hit your summary page, it's right there.
Will it be possible to reset the primary login to someone to someone else if the person who originally registered the company in the portal leave or the organization unexpectedly?
Yes.
And how would they do so?
I think we'd have to do it on our end.
You'd have to call, right?
Yeah, they have to call and then we can do it on our end.
Ideally, you would change the primary logon before that person leaves with the password.
Are we still required to withhold and remit if we purchase a qualified plan? This kind of goes
I
back.
think it's going back to private plans. So again, private plans don't start till 4/1/2025. If somebody is approved for a private plan substitution, they are not required to remit premiums, but they are required to still wage report quarterly. And that's important. We will, because we need to capture that wage data. If an employee leaves an employer that's covered under the private plan to an employer that's covered under the state plan. So even if an employer is approved for a private plan substitution, it only exempts them from paying premiums. It does not exempt them from filing quarterly wage reports, which need to be done for everybody going forward, 2025 forward.
We have 1 minute left, so how do we handle it if we have two separate payrolls? One with the TPA and one that's done in-house? Do we need two different accounts?
If they're both under the same EIN, it'll be one account.
Needs to be one report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One report.
All right, so it sounds like the administrator is the highest level of access on the portal.
Yes.
And this is probably gonna be the last question, maybe one more after that, but if an employee is hired and works in New Hampshire but lives in Maine, does this apply?
So it's hard to answer that question without specifics. The locality of work test is an FAQ on our website. But just the assumption I'm making reading that question is that if you have an employee that works for you full-time in New Hampshire, so 40-hour weeks, they're working physically in New Hampshire, but they go home to sleep at night, they live in Maine, no, that is a New Hampshire employee. But that really is a case-by-case specific, and it depends on the employee, where they work, if they remote work. And so for instance, if somebody's working 100% remotely in Maine, that's a Maine employee, even if they're working for a company in California. So it's a test that's done on the individual level, on the employee level, using a locality work test that's established through the USDOL, and state unemployment uses it as well. So I would point people to our website to get that answer exact, because it's hard to answer without the specifics.
We are at time, but I think the last question kind of goes to what employees you don't count. So what about federal work study students? Are they included in the premium?
So there are 5 exemptions right now in proposed rules for wages you would not include. So that's federal employees, incarcerated people, people earning federal work study, but only the federal work study wages. So if you have let's say a student worker who's getting work study wages, but also works for a campus on a normal job, quote unquote, you would still include the normal job. You're just not including the work study wages. Railroad workers, and then certain qualified volunteers. We only have 5 exemptions of wages in our rules. Those are the only 5.
So again, we are at time, but I want to thank everybody for coming, and Tim and the FAST team for doing a great demo. Again, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website. So with that, I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thank you.